Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live, where we're looking at today's digital revolution from a lot of different perspectives. And over the last 6 months, as we all know too well these days, this whole revolution has taken on new dimensions. But I think everybody is digging through this. We're getting along as best we can. And we're delighted today, as always, to have one of our new Digital All-Star Monthly guests, Bonnie Tinder, who's the CEO and founder at Raven Intel. Bonnie's going to be with us today, as always, to talk about what's going on from the customer side and how these folks are dealing with new modern technology. Bonnie, welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Can't wait.
Yeah, Bonnie, before we start, you always have arresting backdrops there. Could you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing?
Absolutely. So this picture, black and white, behind me is actually the town that I live in, the suburb of Park Ridge of Chicago. And this actually happens to be sort of a monument, a theater in the center of town. And that's what it actually looks like even today. So it looks like we're set back in time. But it's one of the icons, if you will, of my town here in Park Ridge. And then I have my orchids, which hopefully will lead to more calm. We all need.
Bonnie, that's true. We all need it these days. And it sounds like, there might be a particular need for calm in your household. It sounds like you've been tearing some things up there around the place.
Absolutely. And you got it. Calm is needed right now. We just finished up a very large house construction project. In fact, this week we had our grand reveal. And so for the last 6 weeks, we've been under construction. And I don't know if it was the stay-at-home order or, too many episodes of a fixer-upper, but we decided to do this huge project, and we're very disrupted in the process, but certainly glad to be at the tail end of things, and it turned out great, but boy, it wasn't easy.
Well, Bonnie, well, congratulations for getting through that. And I think you had some ideas. You said, going through the process you've just done there with your home construction, and then also I guess in ways of trying to keep yourself sane throughout that. You said that there was a parallel that came to you about what these home projects can sort of be like.
Oh, absolutely. And, I thought throughout the project that there are so many parallels to what I hear customers going through during their digital transformation projects. And, so I certainly had a lot of really tough lessons learned throughout the process. But I'll tell you, it gave me an even greater empathy for what, customers are going through during a digital transformation project. So I actually came up with some thoughts that maybe could be helpful for anybody who's going through one or thinking about going through one in the future, about, expectations. And I certainly have lived through that, and I'd be happy to share some words of wisdom.
As you said, there's probably some parallels there, but I just wanted to toss in one thing quickly, and then really eager to hear, your thoughts on this. One of the CEOs of one of the top technology companies, actually Google Cloud, number 4 on the Cloud Wars Top 10, is Thomas Kurian. And he started there about 1.5 years ago at the beginning of 2019. And he said one of the cultural challenges that had to take place at Google Cloud was, he said there was no question that the company had phenomenal technology, was widely recognized inside and outside the company, but culturally, the organization had a tendency to look at their customers as not just imperfect, but, why did you do it this way? Why did you allow yourself over 40 or 50 or 60 years to build up a series of systems and software and mismatch this and that isn't all perfect and homogeneous and calm and wonderful. So Thomas had said at the time, he said, it's one thing for us to have great technology, but if we cannot empathize with what our customers are going through and the situations that they are dealing with and need us to help them overcome, he said, we're going to be of zero use to them. So when you mentioned that about, as your own personal experiences, giving you a new insight into what some customers are going through. That was really on the mark. And I think with the pressure people are under today from time restrictions, faster time to innovation, faster time to value, move more quickly, change to adapt to the crazy circumstances, I think you've really hit on, some terrific topics to talk about, Bonnie. So please take it away.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as I heard you say, how is it a company, has sort of evolved over 40 years and has sort of this technology mess? Why is that? And, I will say, my house was built in the 1940s. We live in an older home, and there are reasons that the electrical was done a certain way or the plumbing was done a certain way. I mean, it was like what we had to work with at that period of time. New constructions are great, but, a lot of us live in a home that's not a new construction. There's a lot of benefit to this nice legacy that we have, this older home. And so I think, you adapt as time changes and, really adding on and becoming more modern. But as you go is one of the realities of these companies that have been in business for 20, 30 years. What they did at the time was groundbreaking, but they have to evolve and with the times and with the technology as it's changed.
We had an electrician down in the basement of our house, and when the house is about 105 years old, when he went down, they stopped and looked around. He said, "Oh my God," he said, "we could open a little, the museum of the history of electrical systems and wiring." He said, "You got some of everything here." So, Bonnie, how would you lay this out? What are the key lessons that you think people can take in these days of, you've got important, significant, strategic software implementations, which are always challenging in their own right. Then, as we were talking about a minute ago, these are happening at a time of profound change inside and outside the business, and at a time when there's, in some ways, a greater sense of urgency to get to where I need to be as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. How do you advise people to, deal with that? And what lessons could they perhaps learn?
Yeah. I think any of these digital transformation projects, if they're going to be, impactful to your business, they're going to be big and complicated. And to do them right, there's going to be challenges along the way. I think number one is that if you're on a team and you're embarking on one of these projects, you need to be sort of prepared for disruption. The same way that during the construction of, our house remodel, things were dusty and, it really changed our, daily lives to have to live through the construction. I mean, it's very similar for customers who are going through a project. They have their full-time jobs to do, so does their project teams. And, during that period of time that you're working on, the implementation of these new softwares, you have to be prepared for that and know that, getting good at prioritizing what's important and being able to balance, here's my project and here's my, the role that I play within the company that I still need to fulfill. There's going to be some trade-offs there. And I would say, a lesson learned is, number one, ask for help as you need it from your team members to help for your time to focus yourself on the important priorities in a project, and really be transparent with your team members about, what's competing for mindshare, during the course of a project, because it's going to be hard to balance everything and make sure that things are getting done. There are many times during the course of our project, my husband and I looked at ourselves and, there was all kinds of things that came up, and, we questioned, is it worth what we're doing here? And that is probably what you're going to feel like in the middle of these projects, because they can be very challenging, very complex. But keeping sort of that end goal in sight, knowing that it's going to be challenging along the way, even if you have the best team, you have the best software, these projects are not, they're not going to just be as easy as if you just had your regular job. So you want to prepare. Number one, prepare for disruption, because anything significant worth having is going to be challenging.
Bonnie, I don't mean to go overly, Dr. Phil on you, but would you encourage people, do you have to sort of embrace the disruption?
I think you do. I think you do. And not that you necessarily going to enjoy the journey, but you need to know that it's going to, those type of things, like, figure out, what the silver lining in some of those situations are. And, they're not short projects either. So you should take what you can in terms of sort of like how that's, the good aspects of it, and enjoy the journey, I guess. In the end, you'll look back and really be glad you did it.
Yeah, things to learn along the way. Great. What else, Bonnie, do you have for us? What other, key lessons and insights could you share?
I think, secondly, well, projects are always going to take longer than you think that they would. And, we started out our project plan. We had our project management system all updated with each piece of this project, and we had a solid contractor. We had a really good team, and even still we were late. And I think you want to expect that your best laid plans are great, but things are probably going to take twice as long as you think that they should. And during the course of a project, you're going to have people issues. Somebody unexpectedly has to go out on a leave, or you're going to find things that come up that you hadn't necessarily planned for, that you couldn't have planned for, like COVID-19. None of us really saw that coming. And that certainly pulled the rug out from a lot of customers going through a project. So, this idea of having some resiliency during a project, I think, is also key. But, lay out your plan, have a great, schedule in place and task lists, and, be very cognizant of, what your roadmap should look like in an ideal world, but know that even in the best, the best situations, projects usually go late. I certainly see it, at Raven Intel. We do reviews of enterprise software projects. 50% of the time, customers say a project is late, and about 10% of the time, it is 4 times later than they thought it would be. So even, and these are customers who said, hey, our end result was great. Our consulting firm who helped us was great. Our software that we chose was great, but it just took 4 times as long because of, any number of things that come up, and they always do.
I noticed over the last, 10, 12 years, airlines were getting beat up because of their on-time performance. So what they did was just stretch out the time from departure to arrival, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these, when you've got these businesses that are 1.5 or 2 or even 4 times that the project has taken, 1.5 or 2 or 4 times longer than it should have, is that because their initial projection of how long it would take was off, or no matter how well you plan, I think what you've been saying is you will hit unexpected things along the way, and you can either try to ignore them and pay for it later, or you try to deal with them as they come up?
Yes. I think, there are, certainly there are cases where that the initial time frame was overly aggressive, or you were given advice from someone that was trying to just get you to go through the process because it sounded really good on paper. There are definitely times that that the plan was not realistic to begin with. But I think what we see in a lot of cases, though, is that all of a sudden you start peeling back the onion on a project and you realize that you didn't really have a full like lens into what was really happening. I'll give you an example from my house project. We had an engineer and a contractor come in when we were removing a wall ahead of time from the very beginning and confirm this is not a weight-bearing wall. And lo and behold, we start taking off the drywall. We're mid-project, ready to bring that wall down. Mid-project, we realize it actually was a weight-bearing wall, but the only way anybody could have seen that was when the drywall came off. And I think that happens all the time with these projects, is that you get involved with it and all of a sudden that old process that you thought you could just get rid of because it was so outdated and manual and all of those type of things, there was sort of like reasons for all of those things that needed to happen. And so it wasn't just we'll just streamline it. It's like, okay, well, what 10 other things do we need to do to make sure that we can actually get it streamlined? So I think that midpoint in a project, there are things like that come up. There's situations, there's also the people element too. I hear all the time about a decision maker that held up a process because they were out of the office or on vacation or unavailable to get a process signed when everything was ready to go, and then the project became 2 weeks behind because they were waiting on a single person's signature. So there can be any number of these things that come up. It's just, it's like you don't know what you don't know until you start.
Excuse me for a moment. We're going to hear from our sponsor, BMC. In a world that's changing faster than ever before, the biggest challenge for businesses is creating fabulous customer experiences. That objective requires actionable insights and real-time agility from one end of your business to the other. At BMC, they call this the autonomous digital enterprise, and they've put together a set of solutions to help you anticipate what's coming, adjust accordingly, and acknowledge those changes from end to end. To start your journey to the autonomous digital enterprise, visit bmc.com/ADE. That sounds like that could be helpful in a home construction project as well as running a business. But Bonnie, you just touched on people there, and I want to go back very quickly to our last episode, which you were talking about how do you present your case for a digital transformation project to the CFO with the highest likelihood of getting that CFO's not just approval, but support. Yeah. And I thought it was fascinating that one of the big points that you brought up was about people. And you said, if you go to pitch a project to the CFO and then you say, my project leader on this is going to be so-and-so, and the CFO, checks a couple things, clicks a couple things on her phone and says, oh, that person that you rated as average is going to lead this project. Then the likelihood of the CFO is saying, well, if you're not really vested in it by putting your best people there, why the heck should I be vested in it? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to echo that, because that episode that you did has been one of the most popular that we've had at Cloud Wars Live over the last few months. And I think people really were taking some things from that. So as you come back on it here as well, not that somebody's not terrific, but people take vacations, somebody's out for a little bit. These things can happen. So you plan for the best, but have to be resilient and flexible and nimble along the way, and not let these things spiral into something that becomes really troublesome.
Yeah. And I would say is any project, whether it's a home construction project or it's a large scale digital transformation, it depends on the people that you have working alongside with you. So getting the right people, both internally and externally, is key, because they're going to help you weather through the challenges and then celebrate the success at the end. So absolutely, success is critical on the people that you have leading the project and working alongside you. We had some highly skilled laborers, and our contractor was great, all of those things, but I was still super annoyed with them, right? And so the people side during a project, you will get annoyed with your project team. No matter how good they are, And, there are going to be times that you're going to be annoyed with your software vendor, for certain things, and people are busy. And so, there are, I think, just simple communication tools that you can help, how should I say, emphasize during the process that would make things better. So I'll give you, for instance, on my project here. We had contractors that had other work that they were doing too. So they would say 9 o'clock and they'd show up, not until 1 o'clock. Well, that sort of slows everything else down, and now we're late with the project. And I think to myself, that's the reality of projects. Everybody has competing schedules, time, priorities, personal, lives as well. But simple things like, hey, I'm running late. This task is, falling behind, and I'm, just to let you know ahead of time. I think the earlier that you can be transparent about what's going on, and you can enforce that your team members do the same thing, it's those sort of people communication issues that can get people's emotions on high, and again, not necessarily derail the project, but make it less enjoyable, and sort of, just understanding the people equation and sort of having this common communication guideline with the team, I think is really helpful. But the expectation that you're going to get annoyed with your team, no matter how good they are, I think, know that.
Here you're dealing with, this extraordinarily sophisticated technology, very, very powerful software. It's modern, really state of the art, got, infused with artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities and so on. Yet one of the drags on this, or obstacles along the way that you've described, has nothing to do with technology. It's about human to human communication.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. So Bonnie, I imagine somewhere in the story here, you're going to tell us about the impact of money.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say the other lesson learned here is projects always cost more than you think you would, that you think they would. And, the same, I think, with, as we were talking about time and the expectation of, double the time that you think that it's going to be, and that's probably more likely. I think with budget and the cost, double it, and then maybe, put another, 50% on top of that too. And again, this is not, hey, we didn't do enough planning up front, and, or we, got bait and switched with, the consulting contract. Certainly, again, those things happen. But what's more likely is that you get this scope creep mid in the project. What I called it with my husband was this while we're at it clause. That meant every time that the wall was down, we're or we had, all of this construction and everything moved out anyways. We're like, well, while we're at it, might as well get a new dishwasher, or might as well add an upgrade that we hadn't planned if we're going to do this right. And so I think it's very similar in the course of a transformation project, that there are going to be things that come up that you see as being able to enhance the final result and impact of your project that either you didn't know about before, or all of a sudden, user experience testing told you, hey, this would be a better solution here. We might need to add a new module, or we might need to add a new sort of phase to the project. And, it's hard to say, hey, I'm spending twice as much as I thought I would, or, 2.5 times as much as I thought I would. On the other hand, if what you are doing, that extra cost, is truly going to add to the impact that you can bring your company, look at it as an investment. I mean, it's certainly hard to sell anything now where it's costing twice as much, right? It was hard for me to sell that internally here at my house. On the other hand, my husband's a realtor, and so all of these upgrades that we did that we didn't thought we were going to do, he's filling out the listing sheet because our house will be worth more when we go to sell it. And so we look at those sort of short-term costs as investments and things that will pay us back at the end, as well as we'll be able to enjoy them while we're living in the house. And I think the parallel there with somebody going through a transformation is exactly the same. If it's going to cost more, but you can justify the results that it will bring, know that you're going to probably spend extra during a project anyways, but look at that as sort of the cost of really adding extra impact to your business and a return on investment.
Bonnie, that's again, very interesting. And it sounds to me like you have lived through these sorts of things, right? You didn't read about this in a book, did you? Some of these lessons you've had to earn them and learn them, somewhere along the way. So do you think that, do people get this, or are writers, maybe it's human nature to say, hey, Bonnie, that's interesting, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to have cost overruns. And in fact, I'm going to make my project come in early and ahead of budget. Do you ever see that happen?
For sure. And, I live and breathe project, how should I say, reviews all day long. So the company that I founded is based upon a look back and measuring the success of projects. And there are certainly projects that come in on time, on budget, sort of everything, check the box. It was done exactly as was planned. And yet, I have lots of customers who say it was twice as much time as I thought, because we changed the scope mid-project. And that took us extra time, and it was, lots more expensive than we thought it would. But they still rated their project as excellent, right? 5 stars. They still rated the consulting company that helped them as amazing, because they saw those sort of things not necessarily as a negative impact on, the project. It wasn't like, oh, this was horrible, but on the other hand, there's many projects that still are very successful, maybe even more successful than those that were on time and on budget, because they spent the extra time to make sure that success was truly about business impact at the end, not just checking the box, hey, we came in on time, we came in on budget, and we're on to the next thing. I mean, those companies and those projects that look at the go live as, how did we impact the business? How did we achieve the goals that we thought that we would, as more of the end state versus, hey, we just came in exactly what our spreadsheet said that we should.
I'm thinking in some ways, Bonnie, those sort of cliches, but there's some to it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But it sounds like there's a mindset, right? If you go into this with like God bless project managers, they're wonderful. But if you go into this with a purely project mindset instead of a business value, customer value mindset, you might come in right on time, right on budget. But people look at that lane and say, wait a minute, why did we do this? Why did we tear up the floors and the walls for 8 months to do something 1%, 2% better? So there's got to be then, for the project leaders in this and the decision makers that you're talking to, right, they've got to take a big, broad look at this and keep coming back to that point you've made over and over. Will the company be better off at the end of this? Even though we've taken some twists and turns, we're going to spend more money than we thought. Is the value that's going to accrue to the company from doing that going to be greater than what we had to invest to handle these unexpected or unforeseen possibilities?
In the end, you have to live in your house and you have to love it. And so to the extent that you can make sure that that happens during the course of the project, that when you move back in, everything is exactly as you want it, it's worth the extra time, money, and challenge to make sure, that you can live in it.
So, Bonnie, fascinating stories and ideas here. Do you have any? Do you have a closing thought for our wonderful viewers?
I think, back to something I think I said earlier. I just want to reiterate it. Anything significant worth having is going to be challenging, and I think digital transformation projects, I think house construction projects, are worth, if they're worth doing, they're worth doing right. And just sort of setting up your expectations from the beginning so that you're flexible, that you're resilient, and that that the people side of the equation is really important. I think those are going to, pay huge dividends as you go through the journey. And, as much as possible, you got to enjoy it.
Bonnie, that's wonderful. And, the real world, hard-earned, hard-learned experiences that you've had, I think it lends great credibility to these insights and lessons that you're sharing with everyone. So, Bonnie, as always, thanks so much. It's just a pleasure to talk with you. Really love the background there in the room, and I'm excited to see, what venue you'll be in next month.
That's right. Got to switch it up. Well,
All right.
Thank you so much. It's great
Always,
talking.
of course. Thanks, Bonnie. And folks, thanks to all of you for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. We hope you've enjoyed these insights from Bonnie Tinder of Raven Intel, and we look forward to seeing you next month or next week or tomorrow back here on Cloud Wars Live.